So welcome everyone. My name is Rebecca Casano. For those of you who don't know, I lead our Emerging Leaders Society, local group of young professionals who come together with United Way to impact our community and do big things through personal development, professional development, fundraisers, and volunteer experiences. So if you want to learn more about how to get involved with the ELS, if you're not already a member, we're going to put the link in the chat and our social media handle so you can follow us and stay connected. A huge part of making an impact is developing as leaders. And so this series is really an opportunity for us to learn from seasoned leaders, learn about their successes and their mistakes, and never discounting the journey toward those successes and mistakes and the value that can be found in both of them. The purpose of Lunch with a Leader is really to listen and learn. And a huge part of learning is asking questions. So this is a more intended to be a more intimate and interactive space so that we can learn from the experience of seasoned leaders. And so we invite you to ask questions, be vocal. And today we're in for a real treat. I'm very excited to introduce you to today's moderator, Aaron Knight. I met Aaron in 2017, and Aaron is one of those rare individuals who he's the whole package. He's great at analysis, analyzing data, paying attention to all the details, and he's also an expert at strategic and innovative thinking and problem solving and public speaking, leadership, and has a dynamic social presence. So he's just the full package. And I had the pleasure of working closely with Aaron during last year's case competition, and he was such a vital part of our team. So Aaron, we're so excited to have you here today. Aaron has 12 years of experience in government and public affairs, and he is the past chair of HYPE, Hartford Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs for the Metro Hartford Alliance. And he is currently grants and contract specialist at Connecticut Department of Public Health. Aaron's going to be moderating the conversation and taking your questions and asking them to Jason. So
sounds good. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for the introduction, and now I have to live up to that, so I'll do my best. But happy to be here and happy to welcome everyone to today's Lunch with a Leader. We are joined by Jason Howey. He's the president and CEO of OK Industries Incorporated. It's a medical component manufacturing company which is headquartered in New Britain, Connecticut, with additional locations in Berlin, Connecticut, and also in Costa Rica. But Jason has worked at OK Industries for over the past 20 years, and he's had roles in operations and sales and manufacturing. So definitely happy to have this opportunity to connect with Jason, and look forward to asking him. I'll be asking some follow-up questions. We'll definitely get into some more of his background, so he'll be able to fill in a lot of more detail there. So Jason, nice to have you, and thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And for everyone else, like I said, welcome. Definitely want to encourage you to come off or come on camera and join us in this discussion. As we continue to move forward, we'll be asking you, this is meant to be an interactive and engaging conversation. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or to raise your hand virtually using the feature. The reaction feature here, and then we'll definitely like for you to be able to jump on and come off mute and be able to ask some questions of Jason as well. So happy to have you and welcome to Lunch with the Leader. So Jason, I think in getting started, would you be able to just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your backstory, and leadership, working with OK Industries, and then also any background connections or any work you've done with United Way?
Sure. Actually, I'll start with the United Way piece. OK Industries has been actually a very long time partner with United Way, and we do a big annual campaign in the fall where we actually really link a lot of stuff around our value of impact to United Way events that we have. We have a very big drive. We have typically one of the organizations that we sponsor come in and speak and do a rah-rah session. And it's we do a lot of different things for the community, but that's the one event where we actually do a dollar for dollar match for employees who actually do donating. And our participation rate is typically somewhere 60, 70, 80%, depending on year and circumstances. So it's a very big deal. And then we have a big celebration at the end. So we've always been very involved and very supportive of the United Way. In terms of my background, just really kind of starting from the beginning after college, I actually started working in New York City, and it was great until I realized that was starting a family, moved out to suburbs in Connecticut, and was up at 5 on a train by 5:45 and not getting back until 8, 9 o'clock at night. And I said, I don't think this is what I want to do with my life. So I actually approached my father. My father actually bought OK in 1990 with 4 other investors, which is a much smaller company at the time. And some of the skill sets that they were looking for to grow the business were in line with what I did. So that's kind of how I got to actually OK. But I was after actually the first 2 years, I was there and got a lot of different exposure. I was kind of I'm not a person that sits still, and I'm anxious to do a lot of things, and kind of being held back. I actually decided to leave, actually, which was a hard decision to go and tell your dad. Said, hey, thanks, but not for me. But a huge learning experience for both of us, I think. And I actually went and worked for in Boston for another year and a half or 2 before coming back and really having that alignment about what does success look like, what does the future look like, and then really from there it's been nothing but terrific. So I've been fortunate enough to be in many different departments within the company, so really understand all the pieces and how they all work. So. And yes, there's an awful lot of learning by mistakes, as Rebecca said. You learn a lot more from your failures than you do from your successes, but key part of learning.
Thank you for that, and that's definitely gives a little context to kind of some of the questions or things we can maybe kind of ask you moving forward. I did skip a step. I wanted to kind of engage with our audience and make sure they got an opportunity to introduce themselves and let us know, what brings them to Lunch with the Leader and wanting to join. So if I can go around, I know Kate's with, I have the United Way background, so I have Kate's with United Way and Liz with United Way. Thank you for joining us. Dave, did you want to come off mute and maybe just quick introduction and what brings you to Lunch with the Leader?
Sure. I've got a landscaper mowing the lawn, so please excuse that noise if you hear it. But when I saw Jason's name up on the email, I said, you know what? I know Jason. Jason, we met at Shelter Harbor at a wine dinner, and I also have a connection with United Way. We just raised $400,000 at an event, which I chaired the committee with 2 other guys, and so to prevent homelessness. So that was a April event, and that between United Way and seeing Jason's name there, I said, you know what? Let me sign up and see what's happening.
Thank you very much. And Robert, you want to come off mute and let us know why you joined us today?
Yeah, I would say it's very much the same situation. Sorry.
No, but go ahead.
I just jumped in. I'm used to that. Very much like Dave's commentary. When I saw that Jason was running this event, I was keenly interested in getting some keen insights from Jason and his leadership style, and I want to learn anything I can from Jason.
Thank you for joining us. And Robert Williamson?
Yeah. Hi, Jason. I support the annual campaign for OK Industries from United Way. And so I'm always interested in learning more from Jason, who's a fabulous leader and lives the talk. So anything I can learn from Jason, I'm up for. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Kristen? If you're able to come off mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, hi, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm multitasking today, but I am here today. This is my first Lunch with a Leader, and this year I'm chairing a hype committee, and we do a lot with the United Way and Emerging Leader Society. So I thought I'd be here as a supporter, and I'm also interested in learning about leadership and hearing leaders' stories, as we can always learn from everyone's experiences. So happy to be here today.
Thank you for joining us. And Stephanie, I know you're part of the team.
Yes, yeah, I work at Hartford Steam Boiler, but I've been involved with the Emerging Leader Society for several years now. I love attending all of their events. It's always a good learning opportunity. So looking forward to this.
Thank you for joining us. And I know we have Maura in the background. I don't know if she's going to hop on or not, but I always like that Maura's always there to join in on all of our events. And someone was on who hopped off. My mother joined. And I should have gone ahead and introduced her first and put her on the spot. But thank you, everybody, for joining.
She bought a ticket for it.
I appreciate the
good
support,
mom.
but I knew that account, and so that was very funny. But she, I guess, didn't want to join. Fully join in on the conversation, but figured I'd let everybody in on that. So thank you for sharing your reasons for joining, and definitely being moved to join us and kind of get some additional insight from Jason. And I think that would definitely lead to one of my kind of first questions, kind of, what are some of your tried and true skills that you value and use constantly in your leadership roles, especially in your, the growth of within OK Industries over the last 20 years?
I think that the first thing that a person needs to understand when they get in a leadership role is that it's no longer about them. So when you're kind of going from a person of being an individual contributor to being a leader, you have to realize that you're being paid and you're being measured on getting things done through others. And so your number one job is to make everybody great, make everybody successful. And how do you do that? You need to build relationships. You need to have high emotional intelligence. They need to know that you care about them and that you have their best interests at heart. Because if you don't have that, if they don't believe that, then you're never going to help them actually reach their greatness. So that's step number one for me, is you have to commit to be a good leader, and your number one commitment as a leader is to make your people great. So I think that's pretty important. But I mean, I could go on and on, but just that comes with having those type of relationships. I mean, obviously things like trust and respect are significantly part of that. Integrity, I would say never compromise on integrity, because that's basically that's what will keep you up at night if you're not. So you need to be true to yourself, true to others. Rebecca again mentioned learning from mistakes. Letting other people see you make mistakes makes it okay for everybody else to make mistakes, which is massive. And the data will tell you that those who make the most mistakes are actually the most successful organizations. If you take a look at companies like Google and a lot of Silicon Valley, they just have a blameless problem-solving cultures. So if you think about it, in a lot of different organizations, when someone makes a mistake, what happens? So I'll call them some of the most destructive and worst human behaviors. And it's they blame, they shame, they criticize, and they judge. So what happens when a person feels that way? The next time they make a mistake, what do? They hide it. And that makes it even worse, right? So a basic principle of mine, I never believe that anybody else wants to do a bad job. It's typically something with process or communication or something else that causes the failure. Now, don't get me wrong, there's people that are, they're not going to meet up to certain expectations, but as a general rule, use the mistake and use the instance to get better, to get smarter as an organization, and in terms of the people that report to you, in terms of how do you make people better. So learning from mistakes is huge. People are always watching leaders. One of the first leadership classes I ever took, it was a U-shaped training, and the facilitator had everybody draw a pair of eyes, and then they said, okay, take those eyes, and they put them on the floor inside that horseshoe, and then they had everybody get inside the horseshoe, inside all the middle of the eyes, and then the facilitator says, so what do you think you're doing right now? And basically the message was, as a leader, everybody's eyes are on you all the time. Every single thing that you do, not so much what you say, but also in terms of your body language, your facial expression, they're watching you all the time. And, they're especially watching you when there's problems and how you actually deal with conflict. So when you get aggravated and you get frustrated, they're watching you, and they're going to actually mirror and do those same exact types of emotions and how you actually deal with conflict. They're going to do what you do. So I think it's really important that no matter how tough things are going, you really have to hold yourself together, and they need to see that you're going to lead them out of whatever the circumstances are to do that. So I can go on and on, Aaron. I don't know how much you want me to keep answering.
I was going to say we're here to get insight from you, so feel free to go on and on. I'm going to have a follow-up question based on that. But also for our participants, please let us know if you have any questions. Drop them in the chat. Anything that additional insight you're looking to get from Jason, please share. You said no matter how tough things get. And that kind of triggered kind of my thoughts over the last 2 years. One of the toughest things we've had to do is, get through, a worldwide pandemic. So, as we've kind of, for the last few years, we've gotten through that challenge of this becoming our new normal. And I'll just tell a quick story. As I was through HYPE, I was part of the Metro Hartford Alliance board, and the only in-person board meeting we had in 2020 was about March of 2020. So that was literally right before kind of things were about to change, and to be sitting in a room with people who are running the Bushnell, or you had the mayor there, or all these high profile leaders who have to kind of start navigating what's the trend of where we're going. Was interesting to be in the room with that group and kind of discussing kind of how this pandemic and how this might affect how their businesses are going to run. So when you think back on kind of where you were, going back to early 2020, and where you stand now, has there been an area of growth or development, or that you've been able to accomplish or see in yourself while leading your company through the last 2 years coming out through COVID-19?
Yeah, so I would say that when everything with COVID started, we actually kind of came up with a 5-point strategy at OK. First is obviously you got to keep people safe, and you got to do basically, because you didn't even know what to do, right? So you're listening everything on CDC guidelines, and a lot of times those are changing by the day, and so basically employee safety was first. Second of all was really the quality of our product. So every single thing that we make goes inside a human body. So there's a lot of stories about a lot of different companies. When things are against the wall, they cut corners on quality or other things, and people remember that. Customers remember that, and they remember it for a very, very long time. So despite what's going on, you never want to do anything that impacts the quality of your product. Third was just really managing the business in terms of cash flow, business continuity. Fourth was I think is the biggest one, and that is how do we over communicate, and really managing employee fears. If you remember in the early days, they were freaking out. So you would make decisions, you would communicate, and then what you told them one day, you'd find out, that was the wrong thing. So you'd have to go back the next day and say, hey, we turned left and we should have turned right. You admit, and you keep moving on. So if you think about, in terms of communicating, we just did a recent, employee survey, and one of the questions that we ask is, hey, what do we do well? What do we need to improve on? And the number one item on both of them was communication. So it just, it's just interesting how people, need different types of communication. So as a leader, your job is to over communicate, and it's impossible to actually over communicate. You can never do that. So I think that's one of the big takeaways that I think we've always been pretty decent at communicating, but then again, he says, how do you actually try to over communicate? And then our fifth strategy was, despite what was going on, you can never take your eye off the future and off your strategy. And so we are committed to still playing some offense and still investing in the company in certain areas that we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last, but you still got to keep moving forward. So those were our key points.
That sounds great. And so over the last 2 years, as you talk about keeping an eye on the future and being on offense and seeing opportunities, have there been new initiatives that you've been able to execute in that time, whether it's just in how the company operates, how your staff work, whether either a hybrid or within this new normal, or just new either product lines or new opportunities for the business that you've been able to execute during this time as you kind of are ready to springboard into the future?
Yeah. So, as a manufacturer, I mean, we were, we weren't remote, except for certain people. And like even me as a leader, I certainly don't need to be here, but I never missed a day.
Mhm.
I mean, I knew at a point that I was going to be here every single day, and every single day I was walking around the entire shop to say, people, hey, and I said, thanks for being here. It's really, really critical. And they saw me, so that's a big deal. But we didn't stop our investments in certain technology. I mean, a lot of the technology with what we're doing now in terms of virtual meetings and stuff, certainly exploded, and there's certain things we're leveraging off of that. But you'd be surprised. A lot of companies, they were so quick to leverage. Hey, we have to keep cash flow going, and they would lay people off. And I tell you, we actually made some of the most strategic hires in the past 2 years because, either they didn't like what their company was doing, the company was laying off people because they were freaking out or whatever. So again, that kind of always you can't take your eye off the long term no matter what. So but some of we've actually been awarded some of the most significant new projects in the past 2 years as well, is because we kept looking forward.
I was gonna say that's great, and being able to hear that obviously it was a difficult time, but there's still opportunity and growth that can be achieved during that time is definitely important. So it's great to hear that your company's been doing well and you're able to kind of take that time and make those investments in your people and also in the business. And one of my questions was going to be, so I think from your bio, I've seen a lot of your board positions and your current board activity revolve around obviously the medical device and medical industry, but also in manufacturing and making investments in manufacturing. Can you just kind of talk about what it's like as a you're a family-owned business, you're a Connecticut manufacturer. Can you kind of talk about the strength of the medical device industry and manufacturing within Connecticut, and then how that's important to kind of our future in general, and kind of the leadership work that focus you have on continuing to build maybe the kind of the next wave of skilled employees who can go into the medical device industry?
Yeah, so I mean, New England and particularly Connecticut, we're known for very, very high precision, very tight tolerances. And to put it in perspective, if like one of the parts that we make is implantable pacemaker, defibrillator, if you guys know what those are. And so we make components for that. And those are parts that actually go inside a human body, and they'll stay in there for 10 or 12 years, right? And you'll have what's called a tolerance. So I'm trying to speak non-technical side to maybe people that are not technical, but everything that we deal with has to do with tolerances. So if you imagine a dimension from point A to point B, and you have to hold that within a certain tolerance band. And the tolerance band that we're talking about is if you took a piece of your hair and you split it into 3 the long way. So think about how small that is. That's basically what we're working with. So the amount of precision that in terms of that we're dealing with the parts that we make is pretty critical. A lot of the stuff that was a lot of everything from toys to other things are very, very easy commercial stuff. None of that's actually made in the United States anymore. So really the stuff that's highly what I would call mission critical, that if it fails, it's a big deal. Very high precision, very complex materials. That's the type of stuff that's still done in Connecticut. In addition to that, because of the quality requirements, there's also much higher levels of automation, vision systems, inspection systems, and now they all talk to each other actually with computers and with sensors. So just think about a very integrated world with equipment talking to people, talking to sensors, talking to ERP systems, you name it. That are all fully integrated and talking to each other, that are driving production. So there's a lot more now dealing with basically computers and techs than than what there was to, which I think really plays into the younger generation strengths who grew up with a cell phone versus someone like me who didn't. So a tremendous amount of opportunity, but it's also one of the biggest concerns that we have driving a business in Connecticut. Some data that's a little bit, my data is probably about two or 3 weeks old, but in Connecticut there's 117,000 job openings, and there's 92,000 people unemployed. So do the math. If you were to take every single unemployed person and employ them, there still wouldn't be enough workers in Connecticut. And you're trying to drive a growth strategy, that's a challenge. So, so other ways around that are more around automation that I mentioned that we're actually spending a significant amount of investment in.
And your role, is trying to fill that gap. There are challenges. What are you looking to do to try to? I think some of it is like not stigma, but just manufacturing is dirty manufacturing. But there's these high end products that we create in the state is clean manufacturing, is high tech manufacturing. How do you? I think that's some of the work that you're doing in your role and boards. How do you share that with as many people as possible to know that they're people young people coming out of high school, a valuable opportunity for them is to go into manufacturing, which actually has this high tech work behind it?
Well, we certainly sponsor a lot of tours, but I tell you, about 4 years ago, I walked into New Britain High School and walked into the manufacturing lab, and it was almost exactly as you described, Aaron. It was like walking back into 1943. It was terrible. So I actually started with, I worked directly with the school district, which we had started a healthcare academy about 10 years ago. But we said, we're going to commit and we're going to actually create a manufacturing, engineering, and technology lab at New Britain High School. And to make a long story short, we got Stanley Black and Decker. We got them to really be the kind of the first contributor with a $100,000 grant. And between us and the school district and the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain, we've been actually able to raise almost $750,000, all private money. And we have completely retrofitted the lab at the high school. So if you walk in there today and you're young kids, like, wow, this is cool technology. This is how things are done now. Every single piece of equipment's got a computer on it. So you're absolutely right. And now we're actually putting that equipment down actually in 2 middle schools actually in New Britain. So they see it actually at that stage. So, but they're ready to go when they're in high school. So I do think, Aaron, in terms of that perception, I think it's if you go to most manufacturing companies in Connecticut, you're going to see high tech stuff everywhere. The problem is that perception kind of still lags what the reality is, and that's what we're trying to change. And the state's actually doing a very big promotion actually on manufacturing careers. There's actually some money just in the last legislative session that they've given to do that. So you're going to see a lot about that, really trying to say, hey, go and look what these people are really doing and get them integrated. And then the other thing is you got to have internships. So we partner also with Central Connecticut State University. We're very big there. We have a scholarship for the School of Engineering. And we're actually, for the first time this summer, we're actually partnering with the School of Equity, the Department of Equity and Diversity. We've got 6 interns in all different areas from School of Business and Engineering. They're doing a rotational program here at OK in engineering, manufacturing, quality assurance, sales, accounting, and purchasing. So just kind of getting people, and we have to continue to sell ourselves. So that's just a few of the things that we're doing, but it's basically all hands on deck, Aaron, to get people to come in and join the manufacturing team.
And as a leader, I mean, you maybe can speak a little more to this, but I think you're looking at the overall industry trends and saying, okay, these are where the investments need to be made. It might not necessarily be investments in my facilities that are important. I need to invest in the future. I need to invest in, kind of the next wave of people. So I think that kind of what drove kind of the need for you to look at New Britain High School as a viable opportunity to make positive investments in the future, and then in a partnership with Stanley Black & Decker.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that we looked at it and how we got the school systems to kind of to buy in is, let's talk about it from a business perspective. I mean, I told the schools, I said, look, I'm one of your customers. You're producing a product, students, that I need to come into my job to help the business grow, which helps the community of New Britain, the state of Connecticut, and the United States grow. So we need to be in alignment in terms of what those skill sets are. So we have some people in our team that are actually in both at Central and also at the manufacturing technology lab at New Britain High School that are actually creating and developing and building the curriculum, which has been a really, real big help.
And that's great. And I think that's, from my, previous role in economic, development, that definitely are some trends and things that I've noticed and know that are important for our small businesses, but also the state to be making investments there. So that's great to hear that you're making progress, and that actually you've had a lot of success just with, I'm starting with $100,000, now being able to raise up to $750,000. Again, I'll just remind people, we would love for this to be an interactive chat, so you don't have to hear all the questions coming from me. Again, if you want to raise your hand and you have a question for Jason, please let me know, or drop something in the chat. Would be happy for you to. Oh, Robert's got a question. Robert, you want to come off mute?
Yes, I think, Jason, you did a really, really nice job earlier of describing what you should do as a leader. And I think those were very, very good, valid points. I would like to get a very specific response from you about a time when you did not follow those guidelines and you didn't follow your own management guidelines, if you will. And then what were the results and what happened and what did you learn from that experience?
Great question, Robert. So I have a tendency based on my DNA is I can be impatient. So when things aren't happening the way they should, I have to be. I'm significantly better as I've aged and seasoned. But in my younger years, people could see my frustration, and I could see their body language after that. So, rather than getting frustrated on that, and I see the impact on them, because remember, all eyes are on you as a leader. So when you're doing something, they're reacting to that very negatively. On the flip side, positivity and passion, they're contagious. So, there were certainly times where I got frustrated and I said, well, why didn't we do this? Why didn't that happen? And when you look back, that's just it's a very, very, very negative thing. So obviously the single most important thing you can do is what? Say, I'm sorry, right? There's nothing that rebuilds trust and saying, hey, I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that. But we actually created something on this several years ago, really around that blameless problem solving culture. We call it SMART. And just, hey, when there's a problem, when you start, everybody has a physical reaction to frustration. And to really just stop and say, hey, what happened? How did this cause? And more importantly, where do we go from here? Because if focusing on the past is destructive, it's a waste of time, doesn't get you anywhere, and it really brings everybody down. So keep looking forward with a positive intent. Great question, Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Howey. Well done on the answer. Thank you.
Can you kind of talk about the importance of kind of culture within a business? Whether, is that culture that you develop, does it need to be uniform across, leadership and, employees, or is it good to have a culture that your employees have that they understand is the culture, but also set maybe a different leadership culture too? I think it goes back to kind of you talking about the all eyes on you and the importance of people, how people see you as a leader. So you think culture should be the same throughout the company, or is it important to have maybe different viewpoints within that culture that you're building?
You more than anything, you really want alignment of culture, right? And culture is a tricky thing, but it's probably, believe it or not, as a leader, it's probably in my top 3 things I spend time on, just because I think it's that important. And a culture is basically a conglomerate of really all the behaviors and all the personalities of the people that are in that organization, right? Some people say that culture is the worst behavior that the organization permits, right? There's a lot of ways you can actually define culture. A lot of times people have values, and in terms of what the strategy is, and values can be just things on a wall, but it's really about the actions that the leadership, in terms of how they behave every single day. And it's actions, not words, I think, more than anything else. But it's critical, and it's not just the leader. It's not just leaders saying, hey, I'm going to define this culture, and this is the way it's going to be. Is that because if you guys want to try that, good luck. I've never seen anybody be able to do that. It's really about kind of thinking about each of the values that are really, really important and saying, how does this link to why it's important to the organization? And this is what we need from each other to do that. But culture, there's nothing I don't think that takes more effort from a leader is culture. It's a journey. You never get to perfection. You never get to the end. You do it all day, every day, forever. Sometimes you have to tweak things here, but it's hard. It's hard, and it's the single most important thing a leader. You cannot execute a strategy if you don't have a culture that's going to support it. So, if there's one thing you hear from me today, just do not underestimate the power of having a positive culture and everything else that you do, because it really drives behavior. And also from a talent management perspective, your A players want to work for healthy cultures, and we know that. And A players drive business results and business success. So that's why it's that critical, and that's why I spend that much time on it.
Can you speak to that journey, like maybe a little more specifics? Was there a point in time where you identified there were concerns, or that the culture wasn't in alignment with where you needed to go with that for the company to go? Was there a point in time where it's like there was a solid investment that you needed to make on kind of turning around or improving company culture so that you can kind of get to the future successes you're looking for and the growth of the company?
I mean, a lot of them haven't really changed. Like our number one value, for example, is safety. If you ask anybody at OK Industries, without question, but we've actually redefined it, not just physical safety, because in manufacturing you want to make sure that you have obviously a very safe working environment, but we also emotional safety. We're trying to make it, people need to feel comfortable here, to talk about things openly about what's wrong. But it is incredibly, if you're just up there words, like if you say, for example, quality, obviously quality is another one of our values. Like, we have parts that basically go inside people for years, right? And you could be touching a metal part that goes in someone that could be a loved one, right? You don't know what part you're working on or who it's going to go into. But if you do something like, for example, we're going to take a shortcut on quality because we need to make the shipment and get it out on time, what does that message send to all your employees? They say it's a lie, right? So the key thing is that the leadership has to be true to the values that they are specifying is really important to the culture. But I think when people talk about culture, then a lot of people talk about morale, right? And what do people think? What are people's ideas to boost up morale? You know what a lot of people say? Hey, let's have a pizza party. And for people who have bad morale, it's not because they're not getting pizza. You know why? It's not because they're not being heard, they're not being listened to, they're not being cared for, and they're not performing. So they're kind of like, why do I want to be here? So when we can see that morale is dipping, it's because there's a certain area, certain department, or sometimes perhaps the whole organization where they're not performing and things aren't working the way that people want to. And you need to link. This might sound counterintuitive, but I believe you need to link results with morale. So in other words, if there's not clear expectations about what performance looks like and what the expectation, the outcome should be at, and this is what everybody's role at, and make it perfectly clear what everybody's role is, that's when people start to lose, really kind of lose energy, back out. There's less engagement, and they're just not contributing. When they're not contributing, that's when morale is done. I think about the reverse of that. Think about, what we got to, we're really struggling on making deliveries and ramping up a new project. This customer, they want us to go faster. When you get a team together in a room and say, hey, this is what the customer needs. Say, what else can we do as a team and come up with an action plan to improve? I mean, who doesn't want to do that? Everybody wants to be a part of a winning team. So as a leader, your job is to create those opportunities where people are working together and they're succeeding. Typically I'll have roundtable events with, throughout the organization on just kind of getting the state of the state stuff. And a question I always ask myself is, think about a time when you were driving home from work. It could be from OK or just any job. And you say, God, that was a great day at work. That was a great day. And then you ask that person, well, what happened that day? What happened? And the theme that every single person gives is really along the same lines. It's, you know what? I learned a very difficult problem today. I solved a big business case. You know, I learned something new. I hit my efficiencies. I got that. It was all about winning. Our job as leaders is to create opportunities for our employees to win. And the more that you define that and show them what that looks like, I think that that's what drives morale and that's what drives culture.
I appreciate being able to identify that, culture and building a culture is also about, making people feel heard and definitely driving morale. And that's more important than pizza. But if you are going to order pizza, make sure you order enough. I've been places where we've had the pizza party and we don't order enough pizza. That tanks morale even more. So that was that was my reaction to you talking about having a pizza party. I've been there where the pizza party's been the deliverable. Not enough pizza, that hurts morale even more. Just a little side thing I wanted to share with everybody.
I know that we always over order, Aaron.
Over order pizza. That's, if you're gonna go pizza, make sure you have enough. That's a key thing to take away from today. I think is important here. But I was laughing when you brought up the pizza party. So that was my first thought. What's one of your greatest challenges or greatest and then professional accomplishments? So you talk about kind of winning. What's been a challenge that you've overcome as a leader that you ultimately kind of won and kind of see that as a great professional accomplishment?
I think another one of my leaders key points is that great teams, they never happen by accident. And it takes a lot of work to and this is the hard part about being a leader, is that you have to make some very tough decisions at times, particularly about personnel. The worst thing that you can do as a leader is allow a person who's on your team, who's either not really meeting the expectations or the goals, either from their area of technical competency, but more importantly, what you typically see is based on their behavior. Because if you have a person that's on your senior team that is not either, basically performing at the technical competency level within their area of expertise is, or they have a destructive behavior, everybody on your team just doesn't want to participate. You'll lose your best players because you're not basically taking care of people that should not be there. Now you can coach, you can mentor, but at the end of the day, some of these people, you're going to have to make that hard decision to get some of the people out. Very, 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 some of the hardest things I've ever done as a leader. What I can tell you is that when you do that, typically people on your team go, "What took you so long? Thank you for doing that." And you get so much energy and such a positivity bump. You want to impact culture, that's some of the most important things that you can do. If the number one way to lose an A player is to have a D player or an F player basically allow them to do nothing and don't hold them accountable. Your job as a leader, you have to hold people accountable, and you can't do that. You can't be a leader.
No, that definitely makes sense, and that leads back into morale and culture. So I see it's kind of all weaves together, and being able to kind of successfully be a leader and kind of lead your company forward. So we kind of talked about your backstory, where you it's a family-owned business. Your father purchased OK Industries, and then you kind of started at a young age, and then you left and came back. What would you what's some advice you would give your 30-year-old self or 25-year-old self when you were that now that you could have used at that age? What's some advice you would have given yourself, your younger version of yourself, as you kind of grow and kind of build towards this role of leadership that you have?
I would say take a chill pill once in a while. Just sometimes you're driving so hard that you kind of get out of balance, and you need to have the balance between your career, your health, your family, your friends, and then also your personal time, to make sure that, and you'll have times where you are in perfect alignment, but kind of really just keeping a pulse and making sure that there's good balance between all those really important parts and aspects of your life. Because the last thing you want to do is look back and have certain regrets on certain things that you didn't do. So, and it's your job as a leader to also, kind of encourage that with people who report to you. Do you want to make sure that they have really good balance in their lives as well?
That was actually going to lead. I actually was thinking of like the next question, work-life balance, but it seems to be that's definitely something you want to is important to know at a young age. How do you encourage your employees to find that? Are there any programming that you do within the company? Is there anything you do with at a company level to encourage that, or is it just really promoting it within the culture that people need to understand that you gotta take time for that rest, relaxation, and kind of work-life balance?
You know what? They have to see you do it.
Mhm.
Because I could tell everybody else, hey, do that. But if I'm in the office from 6 to 6 every day, that's not setting a really good example. So I'll tell my staff, hey, I'm leaving early at 3 today to go see my son's lacrosse game, as an example. People need to see that. So it's not what you say, it's more what you do, and they need to see it. I really do believe this is one of those important things that there's too many times where a leader will say it, but they don't do it themselves. And so it comes through very hollow.
Definitely a good idea. Again, all eyes are on you, so that's a good advice. So as we're coming up to our last about 15 or so minutes, again, please, if you have any questions that I haven't covered, that'd be great. Love for you guys to engage. Please drop them in the chat or raise your hand. Jason, for work-life balance, spending time with family, those are important things too. But maybe your involvement in the community. So outside of kind of the boards we talked about, they're manufacturing based. Do you have any other philanthropic or community involvement kind of focuses that kind of build who you are as a leader, in your community?
Several actually. Other than the Manufacturing, Engineering, and Technology Lab, I serve on the board for Hartford Healthcare for their central region. I was their chairman of the board for a few years, and I'm also still on their system finance committee. I'm on the board of Ready CT, which is really kind of connecting education with businesses and dual enrollment paths. And that's one of my areas of passion, actually, particularly in underserved and underprivileged areas, is really kind of creating pathways and hope for those students, and just showing them where they can go. Here in New Britain, the Friendship Service Center, which is the homeless shelter and soup kitchen, we do a lot with there. We actually have a couple of people who serve on their board. I'm on their board of trustees. We support a big walk for hunger, which is actually tomorrow in Hartford at Dunkin' Donuts Park, which we have I think we have 50 employees that are actually participating in that. So again, it's not me just sponsoring, it's me actually doing it too. So they need to see the leader actually be there at these things. But there's just a lot of other stuff that I'm involved in. So we did a big women in leadership, with the YWCA last week at the AquaTurf. It was myself and it was 9 lady leaders from OK. So I had 9 dates on one day, which was terrific. But people need to see it, and it's about being involved as a leader.
That's great, and definitely, being involved in your community and being able to give back and also have those passions probably helps with that work-life balance as well. For our guests, are there any resources or mentors or things that have influenced you over your career that have built you as a leader? What would you say some of your major influences where they've come from? Are there resources that we can share with people?
I'm a big believer in reading a lot, but you always learn from others than you do from even certain classes that I think that you attend at. I think you learn just as much from leaders about what not to do as what to do. So when you see people's failures, I think that's a big opportunity. But I encourage people to network. When people ask me, hey, can you have time to? I was just actually out to lunch last week with a person who was an executive director for a big nonprofit in town, and they were struggling with some stuff. And I said, hey, well, let's go grab some lunch and talk about it. And so, people don't, as a leader, don't sit around and wait. Go out and network. Go and meet people. Be involved. I think just kind of sitting back and waiting things for to happen is just not the way to get things done. So.
How do you encourage your team? So we talked about work-life balance, but do you have to actively encourage them to kind of change kind of how they maybe how they operate within the office, what their expectations for work are, like managing burnout. How do you, is it always go, 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 and then we need to, kind of stop and reassess, or is there a way to kind of encourage that through the normal work day, or the normal work, pace? I think you have I'm assuming you have like contracts and orders that you have to fill. Do you kind of program that in a way to kind of prevent burnout, and prevent kind of overwork?
We have a spirit committee. So almost every single month we're celebrating something, and it could be, where, like the day, the Friday before the Super Bowl is wear your team jersey day. April was, it was Earth Day. So we got seeds and fruit for everybody and had an event outside. And we had some people actually kind of pick up, garbage along the streets outside of our buildings. It's giving them opportunities to do other things. Some people will do it every time, and then some people like, I just want to do my job, and that's all. So, sometimes people get offended that not everybody's doing everything, and you're never going to have that. Just people are wired differently. People have different DNA. So your goal is to get the people who need it and give them opportunities to get involved in some other things within the company that are all not work all the time. But again, it's your responsibility as a leader is that you need to do it, not just, hey, promote it and walk about it. You got to get involved with it as well. So very, 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 very important.
Do you have to have that?
And then some of those times, when you have a team working on a really, really difficult problem, and they're just, you can just tell they're flat out. Sometimes the best time for them is, hey, let's go out for dinner. Let's just, and just for no other reason to say thank you. So we don't even have to talk about the project. I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. And then people know that what you're up against, and say, hey, and you're another main thing of responsibility as a leader is your job is to get everything out of the way from people so that they can be their absolute best. If they need something, your job is to find it out and get it out of the way.
Do you have to kind of drill that home to your managers for them to, again, as they're leading their teams, they need to be seen to participate in the spirit activities too? There's the kind of, from a leadership aspect, like, listen, I know you want to get this job done, but I need you got to kind of participate because they're looking at you and taking kind of their cues from you, correct?
Yeah, and so some you don't have to have those conversations with, and others you do. And how do you have that conversation with them? So I'll say, Aaron said, how do you think it looks when all the other managers are getting involved in this event and you're just sitting in your office all the time? How do you think people view you? Right. So it's step one of coaching is you got to get the person to agree that there's a problem. Right. Because if you can't get the person to agree that there's a problem, you're never going to fix it. So you have to do that by asking questions.
I think that goes back to, you're building a culture. You need that. I think you're speaking to is you need buy-in. You need them to understand why culture is important, and then the buy-in to really drive that home. Then that also filters its way down to their teams. Correct.
Correct.
All right, that's great. We've got about 5 minutes left. Again, if there's any questions, happy to take one more round. If there's anyone who wants to raise their hand, wants to come off mute. And if not, I do have another question. What's kind of any closing kind of professional advice, words of wisdom? Again, feel free to elaborate, but for our young professionals here and our team who were able to join us today, any final kind of professional words of advice that you might want to share?
I think the most important thing, everybody, to be a great leader is be yourself, be authentic. And just jumping on the topic that we started earlier on in terms of the mistakes, you know what? Forgive yourself and forgive others. Forgiveness is a very, very powerful leadership tool, and you need it because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So it makes you better, makes you stronger.
I'll say that's definitely great advice. And I think as a young professional kind of going through my career, definitely need to know, like, all right, things are hard and there are gonna be challenges, there's gonna be ups and downs. You need to be able to kind of manage that. But every kind of challenge or difficulty you have kind of makes you stronger, as they say. And I think that's how we can kind of continue to navigate through our career. I'm not sure if there's anyone else that has any questions, but I think I appreciate all of the insight that you were able to share with us. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be throwing it back to Rebecca. There we go.
I just have one comment.
Go ahead, Dave.
This is Dave Sewell. Jason, I knew your dad pretty well, and I got to tell you, he would be very proud of you with your leadership qualities and what a great leader you are. So, and thank you for sharing your comments today.
I was fortunate enough to have him as a mentor. Believe me, I don't think there's anybody as lucky as I was.
And then I'll just say
Dave.
thank you for everyone for joining us. Jason, thank you for your time and for your insight. It's been a great lunch with a leader. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your insight. Thank you everyone for joining. And feel free to continue to follow United Way and ELS on all the channels. And I'm sure that we'll have some continue to have great programming moving forward. Thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank you,
weekend.
Aaron. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Bye.